Hello, 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 beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the USL show. It is wonderful to be back. It has been really a hectic one day because USL Twitter was kind of turned upside down for just a little bit. And then we found out none of it's real, or is it? We'll get into all that in a second. But I got to know, Phil, how you doing, man?
I am good. We celebrated my daughter's second birthday over the weekend. So we had a lot of family
Second?
and
It
friends.
has not been that long.
It has been 2 years. Is that not the craziest thing? I'm coming to grips with it. There's a lot, but yeah, so we celebrated her second birthday, and it's been just continue to have fun. She's turning into, I don't know, I swear to God, she's like a 2 going on 18, but that's that's just where we're at. And it's been a blast. But aside from that, it was a fun little weekend in sports and a great chance for me to take a breather because Locomotive went ahead and got their business done on Wednesday and then took the weekend off. So I could just like actually enjoy some soccer without all of the added stress. So excited to talk about it.
That's what I get to do this week. We Legion got their game and then we don't have another one till next Wednesday. So I enjoy not having to just watch my own team and get to fully watch everybody else without any interruptions and not have to catch up on it. It's so exciting. I will say you did miss last week, and I wasn't even going to chirp you about El Paso Legion. It was only going to be about it really was just me and Ryan wanted to talk about the Reds beating the Cubs, and that's all we wanted to discuss. So
both would have been fair game, and they both would have been and both would have been fair. I would have accepted any criticism because I've probably been as harsh on the Cubs recently as anybody else. But yeah, it's
yeah.
We'll save that for save that for another day.
Yeah, that's another day conversation. Wrigleyville, really cool though. I decided to go when I went up there. Really cool. I want before we get too far into this, before we get 5 minutes into this, patrons: John Hunt, Frank Anthony, Aaron J, Christopher Cohn, Harry Austin, John Fuller, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Woodard, Noah Telford, Roberto Aguilar, Jeremy Churchman, Stephen Howard, Rion Lacara, Tim Knox, NF Resh 30, Mo West, and Kunal Patel. Thank you all so much for supporting us. Seriously, it makes everything easier with our trip coming out to Oakland, coming up in just over a month. And we want to thank our wonderful sponsors, goals.tv. If you want to check out all things soccer across the USL, if you want to check out some stuff going on with more of the grassroots in League Two and MPSL, UPSL, they got more content coming out that. They got more women's soccer content coming out. If you are a big Euros person, a big Copa of America person, they got content coming out on that. I know nothing about international soccer. I'm not afraid to talk. I'm not afraid to say it. I know zero. So I've been diving into some goals.tv content because I know nothing about international football. None of it makes sense to me. It's all fake. So they are trying to convince me that it's real. And you should convince me that you've actually gone over there because you should sign up for the free website. Go to goals.tv. Thank you for sponsoring the show, guys. Bill, you know all about international stuff, I think, but
I do. I saw a meme earlier that talked about if someone is watching all of the Euros games and watching all of the Copa America, how your day starts at 6 a.m. and it's just constant until like 9 p.m. Till like 11 p.m. because it kicks off at 9 p.m. So yeah, it's gonna be a long summer.
And that's fine. That's fine.
Bring it on.
Yeah, bring it on. Let's go ahead and hit the hard-hitting news first. Last night, I mean, yesterday evening, rumor comes out on the old Twitter machine that allegedly Bob Lilly had interviewed for Nashville SC, which I had said on multiple occasions. I thought that Lilly fit what Nashville had already had on the roster. So it made a lot of sense to me. But then John Krasinski, who's over with Pittsburgh Soccer, and the guys over at Mongols, like they came out and said they talked to people within Pittsburgh and they said that conversation never happened. There's been zero contact. That said, I've had people within Nashville camp who was not just that Twitter account say that there has. So there's some conflicting information. Now, here's one thing I said on Soccer Down Here today that I want to throw out there. An interview in these terms may not mean that they were flown out and talked to. It could have been a phone conversation. And they said, "Hey, Bob, you want to take the Nashville job?" And he might have just said, "You guys suck. I don't want to join your team." And he hung up. And that's technically an interview. We don't know what the extent of conversations are, but there's conflicting reports. But if anybody is deserving of making the jump to MLS and be a head coach, isn't your 1A top of the list have to be Bob Lilly?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of pedigree, in terms of like history in the game, obviously like a lot of his accomplishments, I guess people might say are like in the lower leagues, but the reality is Lily's gotten results literally wherever he's gone. And I yeah, I think a team like Nashville who is trying to right the ship, right? Like they're trying to get things under control. They're trying to find a little bit more steady foundation. I mean, Lily feels like it would work. And I know, Kaylor, I think like you were sort of the first, like before this was even a thing or a rumor, you said like Lily Lily could be a candidate for this Nashville job or like could be a fit for this Nashville job. So the fact that that's now become maybe if not 100% real, the fact that it's like kind of happening is has just made me laugh because I'm like, did Kaylor just like speak this into existence?
Clearly, Nashville front office listened to me, very important person who talks into microphones. Um, To
They're
me, it
fans.
always came down to Nashville is built defensively. They have a strong defensive base. Anytime that you have a guy who starts for the U.S. men's national team on the regular and debate whoever you want if MLS should be starting, I do not care. I could care less. All I know as an ignorant person is that he starts, is that Zimmersman starts. And you add that on top of a former MLS MVP. um, I think when you add that to the mix, who is known for scoring a bunch of goals, I think you look at when Bob Woolley had a guy like Russell Cicerone, someone who was scoring, if he had 10 goals, he was getting 5 assists as well. He was equally looking to pass as he was to score. And that was a really dynamic Pittsburgh team where I think that if that were to work, I think Lily would work well. Now, the best we saw, quote unquote, Lily ball work. I think that when we talk about the best it looked was when he had a guy where I said it on Soccer Down Here today, but I kind of consider it to be like Carmelo Anthony at running the court, where he's never looking to pass. He's only looking to score. He's making fun off the ball movement, but he's only doing it to get into a position to score. The conversation is never passing the ball. um, so that's just kind of what I think is that would work. Um, I think that if they were Nashville were to get a guy like Lily, I think that it would I think he would solidify them as a solid playoff team, maybe just above the playoff line. Liam, I see your question about Dom Dwyer's first play with Oakland Roots. We are talking about Oakland later, so I promise we will get to that. So just hold on if you want to hear what we think about Dom Dwyer and that whole situation. We got if Nashville is doing bad and Floyd comes in, it doesn't matter results. So blame him and start mocking the USL. Yes, and also kind of no. Um, with their coach, who was a former USL coach himself, he worked them up big time, and I think a lot of people kind of got upset with where he was taking them. I think in year one, a lot of people would see Lily and say, "Hey, like you didn't get an off season to build what you wanted to do." I think that is if you gave him an off season and it continued didn't do well, I think that's when Nashville fans would say, "No, we're done with this." And USL sucks, but I think considering where they kind of started, I think whoever comes in, they would be kind of okay.
Yeah, sort of a free hit, I guess, for whoever comes in. I think the encouraging thing, and we'll probably get onto this with the next guy as well, but the fact that MLS teams are even if it is just sort of inquiring around current USL managers, this is an improvement over what we've seen recently, which is the gatekeeping is you must be an MLS assistant prior to getting an MLS head coaching job. And if that is softening even a little bit against USL managers, then to me that's a win in terms of just that coaching pipeline into MLS. Like USL to be, I think, like the sort of league that it wants to be, you need managers being considered for these higher jobs, and you need the USL to be considered a good enough like sort of proving ground for these managers to say like, hey, we should give them a shot at the top level.
Brian Cook puts in here, if MLS teams lack one thing most, it's lack of an identity. Right or wrong, Bob Lilly has an identity in the sport. I talked with John Nelson on Soccer Down Here today. Um, Everybody, if you've been around long enough, has a Bob Lilly story. Every single person has a Bob Lilly story. My personal favorite was I was at a match and the grounds crew turned a light off on him, and he still had the team on the halfway line screaming at them. The game had ended over an hour before. The grounds crew said, "We are leaving. We're turning the lights off." And he said, "Good, they deserved it," and kept screaming. Bob
I
Lilly has an identity. Everyone has a Bob Lilly story.
I I don't know if anyone will get this reference, but if anyone was watching the Premier League back in like 2008 when Hull City first came up and Phil Brown had the team out on the pitch and yelled at them like in a circle sort of performatively, and then one of the players scored against Manchester City and did that as a celebration as the whole team sat down around them and he like pointed and yelled at them. Probably one of my favorite moments in sports. So I can only imagine if, Nashville scores a goal and starts doing like wind sprints down at the end line.
I I just think that I think one thing, and I talked about it, guys 5 through 22, however big the roster construction is in MLS. I don't know their rules. I'm a USL guy. But
I'm done trying to pretend like I'm gonna learn them as
I'm
well.
not
Like
going to. I'm just not going to. I don't think your 1 through 4 guys who are making enough money to retire on it are going to listen to it. But guys 5 through 22 or whatever, they're trying to keep a job. I think they would buy into the nose to the grindstone thing that Lily does. I think that guys who are trying to not just play the sport, but retire as soon as they're done and don't have to do anything else, I bet they will. Um, Armin, we see your questions about Miami FC. I want to talk about this a little bit
sure.
once we get into multi ownership, which is going to be after this. We're going to talk a little bit about what is going on with Dallas, where USL Insight said, kind of going off full said, don't you think USL will always be a proving ground for MLS? Which Ben Hobson and says closing time is the way to get Bob Lilly out there, which please, for the love of God, someone just please play closing time as he's screaming at them. I think that is just pure comedy. But kind of going off here of the USL. Let's talk about the next guy, Eric Quill. Based on just kind of some rumors going through, Eric Quill is being heavily considered for this Dallas job that has just come open. And when you think about it, he was a USL League One champion with North Texas SC. Um, he's been around the Dallas Academy. He's been largely credited with making that academy what it is, recruiting guys like Tanner Tessman, Chris Richards. I think Cervania was one of his as well. Guys who have gone on to Europe and have played for the U.S. men's national team. He is credited with bringing those guys and developing those guys. And if there's something we know about MLS, and this is not just MLS too. Think about Major League Baseball, the NBA a little bit less, but the NFL. They want you to cut your teeth within their organization, sleep on the couches, do the dirty work, get the coffee, start in the academy, work your way up, be the assistant coach, a la Juan Guerra and your Brendan Burke. Do the cut your teeth a little bit, then maybe you'll get a chance. Eric Cole's done that. He did it with the MLS system, with taking a 2-team and winning League One, Ricardo Pepi at the wheel. And if there's anything about Dallas, I think if you're FC Dallas, you're probably thinking, he's been here. He knows what we like. He knows how to recruit the area. He knows how to bring in the kids. It feels like such a no-brainer, and there's a reason why the rumors are getting as loud as they are.
Yeah, I mean, personally, as an objective fan with absolutely
Zero.
no skin in the game, I think that Eric Quill would be perfect for the FC Dallas job. And I think he really should be given this opportunity to leave New Mexico and go to Dallas. And please leave the Western Conference, because he's obviously right now New Mexico is like playing at a very high level. I think a lot of people had questions rightly around Quill when he first came into New Mexico, because it was like, is he getting enough out of this team? Like, is he really making any sort of turnaround? Is this changing what was going on there? And I think he's proven in the aftermath of Zach Prince, who is also extremely highly thought of and is a part of Troy Lessane's setup. Yeah, I think Quill is showing right now that when he's got a full preseason, he can be extremely effective. I think the one question mark is is this Dallas job a good one? I don't does Quill stand to gain anything by maybe even waiting for something better? But I think, in all seriousness, I think it's one of those things where he is going to be a little bit torn about leaving New Mexico, but at the same time, as a USL manager, we've seen plenty of really, really good coaches not even get a look right in
Bob
USL.
Lilly. For how long?
Bob Lilly. I mean, the name that obviously springs to mind as a Locomotive fan, like Mark Lowry. There's been plenty of guys who don't really get serious looks from MLS while they're in USL. And for Quill, being as young as he is, he's got the connections to the FC Dallas organization. It feels like it could totally be a thing. And yeah, I mean, the rumors out there are that he is seriously in consideration for the job. And unfortunately for New Mexico, and I do have genuine sympathy. If he leaves during the season, that will obviously be a big blow to New Mexico, but I don't think you'd be able to hold it against him if it is for an MLS job.
I think if there's one team that could handle it, would be New Mexico, considering Troy Lesesny did it before. They understand the game. They've been a part of the game. They understand what it's all about. And I think if you're FC Dallas, I think that also kind of breeds a little bit of confidence that there's a guy who went from USL from New Mexico to MLS and is looking solid. And that FC Dallas, or sorry, that DC United team has other guys. Alexis Martinez was a former assistant coach down in Birmingham. He's the assistant coach there. Like, they have built kind of a USL coaching squad, and they're doing pretty well. If anything, that breeds a little bit more confidence into FC Dallas to make this decision. Um, USL Inside does kind of bring up what you mentioned, Phil, of like, why leave when the team is doing so good for a team that's brutally bad? Frankly, because if it's not now, it may never happen.
Yeah.
Like, you got to go when they're the most desperate, because how many coaches have we seen in MLS get a chance, fall on their face, stay an assistant coach, or they can fall down and just be a head coach at the USL Championship or League One level again? The
I
moment
mean,
you have MLS,
Lassane has already been fired once in
yeah,
MLS, like, and he's now part of the club essentially. You know, like once you're in it, it's almost the I mean, it's sort of like the Neil Collins situation too, where it's like you get in the ecosystem and then you can sort of be part of the carousel for better or worse, but you can be part of the setup.
the moment you have MLS next, or MLS coach next to your name, you can get a job in the United States wherever you go, unless you have the biggest scandal known to man, and sometimes that doesn't even matter. Like, you'll get a
Yeah.
job
Yeah.
anywhere. If you get fired as a USL Championship coach, maybe you can fall down to League One. Maybe you can make it an assistant somewhere. You'll probably be a college coach. Maybe. MLS just carries a different kind of weight, whether we'd really like to talk
Yeah.
about that or not.
Well, I think the two groups of people that you can, and there's probably more than this, but like the two main groups of people that when you talk about MLS, it is strictly, as Brian's putting down in the chat, it's like it is strictly better opportunity, better money, like career advancement, all this sort of stuff, where for players and coaches, like you can't really begrudge them the chance to like further their career, further their opportunities, because it really does open more doors, and they flat out are going to make, they're going to make more money. Like they're going to, you know, they're going to have an opportunity to work with a bigger budget, bigger names, like get their names out there, get more eyes on them. It's just a reality. And it's not anything against what USL is doing, because obviously this is the USL show. We deeply believe in what USL has going on, and like the reality of, you know, if your career presented you with the chance to move up like a significant amount, especially in compensation, like you gotta take it. Like you kind of have to take it. It's hard to look an opportunity like that, and you have to consider the fact too that like a lot of these guys before being professional coaches have been like Kaylor said, like grinding and making no money, doing this at like youth levels, you know, grad assistants, like all this sort of stuff, making like literally $0 doing this for a long time just to get the opportunity to make some money. And now you get a chance to make like a lot of money. You got to take it.
You know, I think one thing that that US brings up, and it's the other half of the conversation. Tired of MLS just coming into the USL and taking everything that's working here. You can't go more than 24 hours in US soccer without bringing up pro rel. You just can't do it. It's kind of why it happens, though. Good coaches in other spheres get promoted. That's just what happens. And if they're a really good coach, really low at the bottom, guess what? A US or a EPL, or EPL, that doesn't make sense. English Football League, League Two team, if they have a good coach, he's getting poached to League One or the championship. A really good championship coach is getting moved up to like mid-table Premier League. A good mid-table Premier League team gets moved to the top 6. It still happens. I think what a lot of people, kind of like USL Insights talking about, is that they're taking coaches, they're taking players, they're taking cities. What we're seeing out in, yes, now stadiums like we're seeing in Indy. I think we have to remember that coaches and players and stuff like that, coaches and players are fighting for careers. They are fighting for their families. They are still in the raccoon too. That poor Ben.
That is
That's
actually
the biggest
that's the one that gets me worked up. No, no, and
um,
it is like you're saying, Kaylor. It's like I think the players and coaches, it's like that's the opportunity they have. Whereas when they are expanding into USL cities and stuff, that's where you can sort of draw the line, or like interfering in USL teams progressing in stadium deals. It's like that's where you can really get frustrated about that. But when players and coaches are moving, it's like it's tough to be upset with a player or coach who's presented with that sort of opportunity.
yeah, it's just one of those things that you see the growth. I think you can be mad at cities. You can be mad at ownerships for taking the bait, right? I don't think players and coaches are the ones that should be having to take the battle, especially players. I will just say this, especially players, their professional career will likely only last until they're at absolute best late 30s. And that is if they are an absolute superstar, late 30s. After that, you're done. And if I ask anybody in this chat, anybody who's listening to this, granted, I know there's players and coaches that listen to this too. You understand what I'm about to say. But if you're just a normal working person and you're told you have to retire at the age of 38 and hopefully just live on what you did or take a much lower reputable job after you're done, how happy are you going to be about that? Now, we can get mad at cities and especially what's going on in Indy. We can talk about all the stuff. We can talk about what's going on in Oakland. We're talking about Oakland later with Dom Dwyer. But you can get mad about what's going on in Oakland with Fisher and the town and yada, yada, yada. Who cares? Get mad at cities and ownerships all you want. Players, especially, they have to do whatever they can to make their dollar stretch because their career is so short.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're James Milner and you're like a physical freak who can play like into late 30s, 40s, like you got to maximize what you can do. And yeah, I think in general though, to round out the conversation, I think the fact that we've got MLS or we've got USL coaches in the mix when it comes to MLS openings in a mildly serious way, I think that just suggests that the league is taking a step in terms of profile. Yes. And in terms of, we've already had a load of USL managers poached for assistant jobs, right? Like this offseason was just everybody going to MLS for assistant jobs. And the fact that they're looking at current USL managers for MLS jobs just suggests that the level continues to step up and people continue to impress. And it brings more attention and eyes to the league. It's just the reality. I mean, Gio Savarese, I think, is like the best example of a manager going straight from second division up to MLS and having success. And obviously that was huge for, Cosmos has its has its stuff, but yeah, Gio was like a fan favorite out in Portland and won MLS Cup, all that stuff. And it was cool because it was someone that had such a strong connection to the lower leagues as well.
Let's talk about a little bit about ownership and just investments. Armand Mirza kind of brings up any chance the league steps in and does something about Miami FC. The Miami FC, don't disrespect, putting a pro-am team out on the field and drawing 50 people per game and holding back the league when they want to be in MLS discussions. Follows it up with, this is coming from someone new to Florida who adopted the Miami FC as my team as to not interrupt my Revolution fandom. Though these days not really watching MLS. Hopefully Palm Beach happens. I think that when you talk about ownership, and there's a reason why we're bringing this up, Phil wrote a really good blog post, which you should check out, that I'm going to drop into the chat in a second. Um, there's a lot of conversations with ownership, and I think in all reality, Armin, that the league can't do too much here, because we were dealing with this battle with Las Vegas for 5 years, and in the end, it took their owner saying, me waving the Las Vegas bait above MLS saying, "Come to Las Vegas. Like, you want to come to Vegas." Somewhere along the way, he realized they'll come to Las Vegas whether I'm here or not. They're not going to pay me for it. It was a bad investment, and then he refused to continue investment. Ricardo Silva is one of the richest humans in all of the world. You have to remember that the Miami FC still has the biggest like transfer for a lower league team for Richie Ryan. I love Richie Ryan. He was bought for what, $800,000?
Worth every penny.
Every single. I mean, he's fantastic.
I
I
love
love
Richie Ryan though. I'm so biased, but yeah, I mean it is crazy. It's crazy money for USL when you think about the fact that most MLS teams aren't paying $800,000 transfer fees for USL players.
No, but what we're getting at with that is that the USL can't step in because in a true fair market, which we're not in, don't get it twisted. This is not an open system. There's, again, we can't go too long without talking pro rel, but this is not an open system. But to give the facade of an open system, bad teams, poorly ran teams have to flounder. They have to fail. We saw with we saw with Vegas that it took them 5 years of floundering and failing before Bautista came in and kind of saved the day, and it looks so much better. With Miami, they invested, man. Like if you don't remember these last few rosters, the from 2020 until 2023, they had one of the top 3 most expensive rosters in the USL, and they weren't good. They invested the crap out of that team. Yes, they went into a stadium that was too big for them, but if we're being real, what kept Miami fans from coming was how bad they were. Inter Miami was really bad at the same time. That was the Miami's chance to strike. They invested in the team, but for some reason they just got the owner or they got the coaching decisions wrong and they sucked. So when as someone who came in and said, "Do I want to go watch Inter Miami be the worst team in the league, or do I want to watch a second division team be one of the worst teams in the league?" Why would you not pick the higher division one? I don't think USL can jump in because they just sort of did it to themselves despite their investment. And as for this year, their lack of investment, I mean, Silva made a business decision. Dude said, I paid a lot of money to suck. I can pay a lot less money to suck. Most of your favorite team's owners will do the same.
I think the Miami FC conversation is a weird one because I think the way the league steps in is probably less overt, I guess, than what you'd expect. The way the league probably steps in is having like some conversations with Ricardo Silva about, hey, it's pretty obvious that you're like stepping back from your level of investment in the team. Is it like, is your team gonna be for sale essentially? Like, I think like that's sort of the conversation where it's like, hey, if you're gonna sell, like, or if you're gonna not, if you don't want to invest anymore, like that's cool, and like let's find a buyer, because nobody wants to see a team just like die on the vine, right? Like, and
No.
that sort of seems like the way that it's going, where the alternative would obviously be better in terms of either finding someone who's like, hey, I really want to keep this team in Miami, make sure that it's viable, make sure that like we understand where we fit in the market, and what we can do to start like earning some of the market share from Inter Miami. Or take the team somewhere else. Like I hate to say I hate to say relocation because it's like the word, it's like an evil word, and I don't want anybody to ever lose their club. And like the connection between the city of Miami and Miami FC is like zero right now. So yeah, I think this is a tough one because Miami's got they had such a long lead time to like build genuine connection between them and their fan base, and they just never found like their actual fan base, and they never stayed good for long enough to build any sort of or to carve out any sort of niche like in Miami, aside from people who are interested in specifically in USL in Miami, like though, which is a very slim Venn diagram, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Palm Beach and stuff like that. I think that move is going to be really good for USL if it ends up going through.
Yeah.
The reason we want to talk about ownerships, though, Phil, you wrote a really good article about kind of dual ownerships, and there's one example of this, and I kind of want to just bring it up, and I'm going to look it up just to make sure I know what I'm talking about. But I'll go ahead and kind of talk the people through what you wrote about today.
Yeah, so I wrote an article, and this is more focused on like what the trend that's been going on in Europe, but it is a trend driven by primarily American owners. So earlier this year, UEFA put out a study essentially saying like the amount of clubs involved in multi-club ownership, which is the same owners or investment group or private equity fund or hedge fund or whatever, owns multiple or not majority, but enough share in a club, like in multiple clubs, that they could be considered like they could be considered to have a significant influence on multiple clubs. Red Bull is a really, kind of the original example where they just went around starting clubs, like, or buying up clubs and renaming them Red Bull. City Football Group is obviously a very famous one. Blue Co, which is Todd Bowley and Chelsea, like that is another one that's famous. And there are a couple of others that are maybe getting famous for like the wrong reasons, like 777 Partners, who are trying to buy Everton and like somehow failing to do that. But anyways, like there's a lot of these groups out there who are gaining stake in multiple clubs, and what they're looking to do essentially is find ways to run multiple soccer clubs like multiple entities of a business, where you can take sort of the assets from one and share them between all of them, where it's like, okay, we're going to combine all our scouting departments and combine a lot of our coaching resources, and we're going to share players because we're going to loan player X to club Y and all that stuff. And what they end up doing is they end up treating certain clubs in the structure as subordinate to other clubs. So the bottom line is that, like, take City Football Group. They sign a player called Savio from Atletico Mineiro in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. They assign him to Troyes FC in France. He's loaned to PSV for the season as like to get game time in the Netherlands. Comes back from that loan spell where he only plays 6 times, and then is loaned out after Troyes relegation, is loaned out to Girona this year, gets Girona to the Champions League, and he will now move to Manchester City this summer, having never once played for Troyes, who's also been relegated a second successive season. And you're like, this player was accounted for on their books, essentially, having never done anything for this club. And the fans are rightly pissed that they got relegated twice in a row under this new ownership. So the bottom line is that, like, they say that it's because we can create sort of like all, rising tide raises all boats, and like we get to share all these resources across all our clubs. But what sort of ends up happening is that certain clubs get kind of stripped of their assets to prop up the rest of the clubs in the system, the ones that are succeeding. So anyways, I just talked about the fact that it's like this system goes sort of one of two ways, where either these entities buy up all of the clubs in the world. There's currently, by this report from UEFA, there's about 215 professional clubs that are in multi-club ownership like arrangements right now, which is crazy. And that's just across the the sort of the top divisions of Europe. And so either all of these like hedge funds and private equity funds like buy up every single soccer club in the whole world, and it's like, we end up playing sort of like, whatever, American capitalism, where it's like, hey, I bought a Pepsi, or I bought Aquafina, and like they're owned by the same company or whatever, so it's like I just end up pay all my money goes to the same company, or people are going to get, as like has happened at Troyes, as has happened at a couple of other clubs, they sort of realize that they're the ones paying the price for Manchester City to succeed, or Girona to succeed, or whoever, and they start to get really pissed and they protest at matches. And like Troyes' last game of the season, or sorry, like second to last game of the season against Valenciennes, was abandoned because the fans would not stop throwing flares on the pitch, and it was a whole thing. You can like see the system potentially kind of collapse under its own weight, where it's like, if people aren't satisfied with being owned or being subordinate to another club abroad, then like eventually they just show that dissatisfaction to the point where that entity's like forced to sell. Or if they get it wrong, like some of these other entities where it's like 777 partners are like insolvent and stuff like that, then they'll be forced to sell and be, and we could see clubs even put sort of in danger by these arrangements. So anyways, extremely long-winded explanation, but the bottom line is that with these arrangements, someone ends up paying the price for the efficiency that they're trying to build. And a lot of times it ends up being just clubs who end up being like the casualty in this, and the fans as sort of an extension.
The reason I wanted to bring this up is because, again, ProRel, that seems to be the conversation today. We are about a month away from getting our regularly scheduled ProRel article from The Athletic. It's about that time of the year. And one thing that's hard about that is check out teams like Ford Madison and upcoming Milwaukee. I think it's Mac Marchick owns both of them. You can't promote a team with the same owner. In every single league across Europe and other ones like that, an owner can't own a team within the same pyramid at all, right? Which obviously here in the US does not matter because they can't be promoted. They can't be relegated. There is no true battle going on. But if you look at Milwaukee, Ford Madison, there would be. That is major conflict of interest. Which one does he care more about? Even if he accidentally puts more money into one than the other, that's a bad, bad, bad look. And I was talking about one of the most influential figures in U.S. soccer, specifically lower league soccer, Peter Wilt. A lot of his hard work, he would have to step away from everything. He couldn't be involved with all of them. And so at that point, where does he choose? Obviously, I think he's with just Chicago House at this point. But he still has his fingerprints over, if it's in the Midwest, he's been involved, basically. I just think that's one of those situations. And yes, do what La Liga Bundesliga do with 2 teams, but Ford Madison's not going to be Milwaukee's 2 team. Ford Madison is going to continue being Ford Madison, trying to compete and not be a filter team, not be a minor league team for this Milwaukee team. You can have them in the same pyramid, that's fine, but you can't have the same ownership group. You just can't do it. So I think one thing when people talk about ProRel, and all that kind of stuff. Because the reason I've really thought about this is because we had our coaching conversations, right? And a lot of these coaches would get chances at the top flight because they got their way up there most of the time. This isn't one of the reasons why this thing is being hung up. I can almost guarantee you that a lot of owners have their hands somewhere else in this pyramid. Most owners, if they are regionally close, don't just stay in their one little area. They are putting little fingers everywhere. They are just signing little paychecks here, little this, little that. They are everywhere. And that's cool until you say, let's open this up, promotion, relegation, release all of your other assets. You can't have a single penny going into another club. At that point, an owner has to choose. And that is a lot of drama and a lot of hassle that a lot of owners do not want to give up.
Well, and what you don't want to see too in the USL system is, especially with independent clubs being built up, like the worst case scenario for the Milwaukee, like a Milwaukee championship team and a Forward Madison League One team, like owned by the same guy, is X player at Madison starts killing it and mid-season gets loaned to the championship side. Like that is like the worst case scenario, right? Where it's like sort of these out of the blue transactions. And I think, I mean, I'll say, I think El Paso's been mentioned in the chat for different reasons, but El Paso has a multi-club ownership across the border with FC Juarez Bravos. And the ownership group has, I think it's like a big part of the reason why Locomotive Stadium chat has really died down is the owners are focused on building a new stadium for Bravos, who are a Liga MX team. They're in the top flight in Mexico, obviously bring in probably, I would assume, a lot more revenue. And like there's also there have been a lot of transactions between the teams in terms of players, primarily Bravos loaning players to Locomotive. But that's happened too, where it's like, you sort of have these two squads to draw off of for whatever you're trying to accomplish, where it's like, well, this guy's not going to get game time in Juarez, so he's going to go to Locomotive sort of as a developmental opportunity and all that stuff. And that sort of stuff is, I think it's just a slippery slope, because like we were having conversations about Locomotive Stadium and all that stuff early on, where it was like, a couple years down the road, we're going to really seriously start like seeing sites and stuff like that. And I mean, the talk is after COVID, like we basically haven't heard anything. And sort of the things out there, like they may wait until, like, it may be until after Bravos get a stadium, which like that's not really even on the horizon. So like, yeah, there's just a lot of impacts when you get into these sort of arrangements. And even when it's not in the same pyramid or not in the same country, it can lead to some kind of sticky situations. And I think in general, for me, multi-club is just somewhat, like I said, someone's paying the price for the arrangement, and oftentimes the team that ends up paying that price doesn't like it, because you think if someone's, I think anytime we get a team, you want an owner who is committed and wants the team to succeed as much as you do as a fan. And the players and the coaches like deserve someone who cares about winning and about their team as much as they do, and as much as they have to for their careers. And when you get into these sort of things, like inevitably you've got a favorite. Like it's like no one wants to admit, I mean, Kayla, you're a teacher, like no one wants to admit that they've got a favorite kid in the class, but they do. So like same with, I love all my teams equally. That's just like it's just not true.
Not true.
And you can't, because it's a business. Like you have to love all your teams according to their revenue. So because that's how it works. So yeah, for me, multi-club, it's just like, please don't.
Fair. Kind of speaking of teams paying the prices and tying in the coaching conversation, Let's talk about an ownership that's been a little bit under fire after a coach decided to part ways. Let's talk a little bit about FC Tulsa from our good friend John Morrissey, USL Tactics.
It's been a tumultuous 2024 season for FC Tulsa, one in which players like Justin Portillo have left, and one in which their system, a very narrow 4-2-3-1 shape, hasn't exactly hit the ground running. There have been moments of joy, especially when you've got Patrick Segrist and Arthur Rogers overlapping from the fullback spots at the same time. But given losses and absences, that just hasn't been the case often enough. That's why this weekend's win against San Antonio was so exciting to see for Tulsa. With Owen Dam at right back, Milo Yosef on the right wing, and Diogo Pacheco at the left wing, Tulsa played a much more expansive game in which their wingers finally felt liberated to go at their opponents, to widen out and stretch the defense. You're seeing here, as Tulsa possesses in the final third, how Segrist and Dam, the fullbacks, could play a little bit narrower, could sit in a little bit to try and dictate play and open up the defense, drawing defenders up and allowing Yosef, for instance, to get on one-in-one situations like you see there where he crosses in. That was really the goal for Tulsa all night long. They're still a direct team, one that's trying to play longer passes into Stefan Stojanovic and Philip Goodrum in order to enter the attacking half, but the way in which they varied from there, the way in which Yosef was able to actually hug the sideline, not play inverted, was absolutely crucial. There were also, because of that effect, Tulsa was also able to press with a little more efficacy. You're seeing it here where Babacar Jallo, instead of playing as a winger, can activate his size, activate his strength, and drive at the defense with a takeaway. This play doesn't end in anything especially exciting for FC Tulsa, but it's emblematic of a different sort of approach that they brought to the table on Saturday night. Will this approach maintain itself over the course of the season? Time will tell, but it's still nice to see something positive for a Tulsa team who hasn't had it easy across this season.
So let's kind of talk about what's led us to this point, right? We talk about coaches leaving. It's pretty much all but confirmed at this point that when Coach Gavin Brett left, the Tulsa players had something in their contract that basically said if the coach leaves for whatever reason, we can leave too. Now, whether it said if Gavin leaves for MLS, we're out of here, who knows? But there was clearly something in there that said if he's gone, we can go. And they had one of the craziest just falling outs that you've seen. Like you had Adams get up and go, Nate Worth, who we talked a lot about on the show when that move happened about what in the world is going on with Tulsa. I can't remember who it was. He was just in the League 2 or League 1 finals with Crawley. He got sold over there from Tulsa. He went from
Jeremy Kelly.
Jeremy Kelly, thank you. Granted, I think that one wasn't even a fee. I think they just let him go for free. And then you have this Portillo, stuff that comes up. And you're just like, man, Tulsa's on fire, and it feels like nothing is working out. Arthur Rogers gets hurt, and you're like, man, between Adams, between Rogers, between all these other players like Portillo, between all these guys that you're like, we built this team around these guys to win a championship because on paper they looked incredible. We can't overstate that. Going into this season, there was a lot of belief that they could compete at the top of this Western Conference. Dom kind of steps in. John said Dam, but I thought it was Dom. Who cares? He steps into Arthur Rogers' role, and that's some of the biggest shoes you could ever fill in this league. And he's done a really good job after having to really cut his teeth this year. Tulsa looked really good, but before we get to this side of the conversation, I also think there is a bit of a San Antonio precursor that goes along with it.
Yeah. I think Tulsa did look good, and I do want to give flowers to Diogo Pacheco, who has not played that much for Tulsa this year. Gets 2 goals, and the first goal, which showed in John's tactic show, and if you didn't get a good look at it, like go back and watch it again, because the couple of touches that he takes to score that goal are just like of the highest quality. It's the crossfield ball, I think, from Dom, now whichever, from Dom, that finds him in space, and I think it goes to the I think it goes to what you're saying in terms of San Antonio, because I think there are big question marks on both goals in terms of San Antonio's defending, which has obviously been sort of their trademark over the last few years, is how stout they are defensively. They really left a lot of space for Pacheco and Josef to operate in. I think obviously the lot, like, El Paso's having a pretty down year. Remains to be seen like how big the sort of revival under Wilmer Cabrera is. But to lose like to a down El Paso team and a very down Tulsa team back to back for San Antonio, I know there's a travel component of having to go, but I mean, they went from San Antonio to Oklahoma. Like, it's not that bad. Yeah, it's a rough stretch, certainly, for San Antonio. They are suffering from some absences. I will say a couple of academy kids, like, both play at fullback. It's not like their strongest 11, but they did like bring in Jake LaCava from Charleston, who early doors against El Paso, I was going to say, like, looked quite good. I think they kind of deploy him in midfield in this one. It maybe took the shine off of his game a little bit. And all in all, like, San Antonio end the game out shooting Tulsa, but not creating any big chances, which I think, like, offensively they have just really struggled. Yeah, in general, it's great for Tulsa to get off the ground. It's really, really troubling for San Antonio to lose these games back to back.
And this is not me just trying to make comment of the comment that I have on screen. But, I mean, listen, the mentality monsters thing, oh my God, who is it? AJ Cochran has been commenting under, like, every single San Antonio post and being like, mentality monsters, LMAO. Like, players were getting sick of it too. Other players of other teams were so sick of hearing about mentality monsters that I think there's a little bit of, now that San Antonio is a little bit weak, I feel like teams are giving San Antonio a little bit extra, even more, because we hate those guys. Screw those guys. They're stupid mentality monsters. Your mentality can't be too strong if you're in the ER, basically, for wearing your legs down to nubs, right? Like, I don't want to take away from FC Tulsa, because what FC Tulsa did was great. I'm not sure if it's sustainable at all, because you are talking about a San Antonio team who are playing a lot of academy kids, and, you know, good friends of everybody kind of on in the USL circle. Harry Austin is asking decent points on Twitter of like, hey, you know that thing that we did all of last year, which was 25-day contracts? Can we do anything to just put 19-year-olds on the field and not 16, 17, 18-year-olds? Can we get someone who's been to college once to play? Like, we don't even care at this point. And I think it's a fair question if you're San Antonio. Last week, I came out kind of hard on Marcina because I was like, I didn't even know if Jake LaCava was going to play, because I just figured that he was just going to play the same three players until they died. And then you're like, all right, Jake, your turn. Like, I'm not really sure if this system, this idea that they kind of play with, and they're not the same, we're going to possess 30% of the ball and you're going to like it, because I think a lot of people got caught up on that possession number when they won it all. If you remember, and if you don't remember, go find like replays. When they had that ball for the 30% of the time, it was fast, it was lightning, like, and it was dominant. It did not feel like they had the ball 30% of the time. It did not feel like you were just putting pressure on them, despite the fact that they did not have the ball. You were fighting for your life the entire time, and that just kind of I kind of hate to throw out the old adage of like work pail, first one in, last one out kind of guy. Um, when you build your whole team on that, you run them thin. They can't hold on to that forever. It's just physically not possible. And Marcina never really changed. And this team is suffering.
Yeah. I mean, table wise, they're down to 6th, I think, but they have less wins than like all of the teams below them except El Paso. So it's just like it's just a tough. I think it's tough right now for San Antonio. They're not in a great spot. That is a couple of tough losses to take from like teams around them, and yeah, big questions being asked. I think the biggest question being like, where are the goals coming from? Because Agadello's gone a little bit cold. Mbongwe like doesn't really seem like the answer. Lacey's been like dangerous, but that's about it. Like he looks more threatening than he is, sort of. And it's it's a Jorge Hernandez like banger into the top corner in the 90th minute. That is the only consolation in this one. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough for San Antonio, and I think, yeah, when you look at the last couple of performances, you're just kind of left scratching your head about like where do the wins come from for this team from here on out.
Maybe I'm too Brexit ball, play the 4-4 effing 2 for my own good. Maybe I'm too simplistic. But if you have a big guy like Juan Agudelo with a fantastic touch who's really good at holding up the ball, why do you not go 2 men up top, let him get the ball and play the fast guy in on goal? Like, if it feels like such a layup that there has to be something that I don't know.
Yeah, I tactically it felt like, at least against El Paso, it felt like Agadello's job was just to try to get somebody sent off. Like he was just kind of scrapping with everybody. And it almost worked, to his credit. Like I mean, he was definitely getting under folks' skin. But aside from that, yeah, I don't think they really yeah, they didn't create much. And in this game, like I said, 16 shots, but no big chances. And aside from the Hernandez goal, like you just can't even really pick out like a big moment of offensive quality that would have gotten them 2 goals. So it's just, yeah, I think it's a combination of things where like the personnel available plus a team that may be a little bit low on confidence and definitely low on fitness at the moment is just suffering.
Let's move on. Early in the show, we got the question about Dom Dwyer's first appearance. Did not play for Nani FC. Can confirm did not do that. But look, I'm really proud of what Oakland did. You don't play Tampa Bay and take control of the match. I don't think there's really anybody in this league. Maybe you look at your loose cities and say that they can really go toe to toe. But when you look at names on paper and just what they're doing right now, you don't control Tampa Bay. You just try to minimize what they do. And by God, Oakland minimized what they do. They grind out a 1-0 win. And Dwyer looks solid. In terms of specifically about Dom Dwyer, wasn't overtly impressed. Can't say that I was just, just in awe of what he was doing. But considering the fact that he hasn't played a professional minute in a year, 2 years now, he was in a better place than I thought he would be fitness wise. And you could still tell that the talent was still above almost everybody on the pitch. I think what I saw out of Dwyer in that match, specifically on that conversation, was you see the vision, you see the potential of what Oakland can be if he gets really clicking. But if you are Oakland, I think you're over the moon because it felt like they turned a corner with what they did against Tampa Bay. Uh-oh. Is Phil gone? Don't tell me that his internet's just randomly switching again. It could be. This might be edited out in post. Maybe it won't be. We're going to find out in just a little bit. What's up, Edson Ochoa? If you are listening on podcast player, Phil has frozen on me. We will find out where Phil has gone. Don't know. Yeah, I get to go solo once again. Did this earlier in the show. I'm becoming a natural. What can I say? I think Oakland is still interim. If I do remember correct. But yeah, I really do like what I saw out of Oakland. Cyril had a really good game. I was very excited for him. I can't believe they found another Paul Blanchett. That was crazy. Hi, Phil.
Hi. Sorry for that. I think so. Oakland did impress me in terms of like hanging with, because I think last week we talked about Tampa and like what they were able to do against Sacramento. And Charlie Dennis, like Dennis the Menace, literally, like he was absolutely like, well, terrorizing Sacramento's backline. Oakland, not as troubled. I will say that like there were a handful of moments for Tampa where they probably should have taken the lead. And I think if they take the lead in this game, it's definitely, the game has a different complexion. But, you know, ifs and buts, candies and nuts, all that sort of stuff. So it's like you can only play the game that's in front of you. And Oakland hanging in there until the 72nd minute and finding the winner against the Tampa team that came off having like 20 shots, I think, against Sac Republic, and creating like 5 big chances, like totally ripped them to shreds. This is a really good performance, I think, from Oakland. It's a great result, but I think it was coupled with a good performance. And in the end, it's a moment of quality from Memo Diaz to find Cedeno a couple yards out, and they just took the big chance basically that they got against what is a very good Tampa team that is, you know, we should mention, like, suffering obviously with Lasso's like season-long injury. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and traveling to the West Coast, not the easiest task. But that being said, like they did the business against Sacramento, and Oakland made it a lot tougher on them.
Can I say something controversial yet very brave?
Absolutely, always.
I think Freddie Clemens looked better this year than Lasso did before he got hurt.
I mean, you know that this is like a safe space for Forrest Lasso. Like, you know, we call it like it is, I think. And the reality is that Lasso is not the defender that he was, but don't want to kick him while he's down too much, because he can't defend himself now with the injury, and obviously hoping that Lasso can come back strong. But yeah, Clement looked good.
You know, when I'm really looking at these two, when I'm really looking at what Oakland was doing, man, they were just really dominating the wings too. I was really impressed by it. And one thing that Oakland has done since they've joined the league is they continue to sign internationals, and them and Monterey Bay, San Antonio, they always tend to get these international players. They all go away on international duty.
Yeah.
And they all get screwed over for it. When you see Oakland at full strength with their international players back, you're like, oh, that's what Oakland can do. And then they're missing 5 players.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, Yeah, they always find a way. I think too, like, it's worth shouting out. I know not in this match because it was, you know, Cedeno who grabs the goal, but Trayvon Reed has looked very, very good for Oakland over the last few matches, and at times has been sort of like their main route to goal. And I think them finding other ways to score aside from like get the ball to Trayvon is it's needed. And in this one they found another way. But in general, on the Dwyer thing, I think, you know, I think he gets like 11 minutes or something like that, so it's like,
Yeah, not much.
tough to tell, you know, and we'll see exactly where he can fit in. But I mean, if you had to pick a player where it's like, hey, this guy in the last 10 to 15 might get 1 or 2 touches in the opposing penalty area, there's not many strikers available at a championship level that you'd be like, that you'd say I take him over a guy like Dom Dwyer, who's done it for so long over his career.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and go down and take a shot at glory. And hey, the derby of fire and ice was absolutely insane. 4-3 goes NoCo, and Northern Colorado just cannot be stopped right now, man. But I think the more fun conversation here, if we're being really honest, is Central Valley seems to be built for this conversation. This was their first loss in the Jägermeister Cup, and it was a 4-3 banger of a match. I mean, I mean, it's ridiculous. And this is one thing that we talked about. How many 4-3s did we get last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago in League One, where it's like, oh, League One. This year, they've kind of been more normal. And then Jägermeister has brought back the pure chaos that we got used to with League One. And weirdly enough, it feels like Central Valley is kind of built for it. Now, obviously, it didn't result in a win. Northern Colorado got a very much a deserved victory. But man, Central Valley did not make it easy for them, as they have not all year at when they're taking shots at glory.
It is. I mean, yeah, this is like Brett's saying in the chat, it's a Jaeger bomb of a match. I almost thought, you know, with the fire and ice thing, it's like whatever one of those ice flumes or whatever, where you take the shot off of like a block of ice as it like slides down. I don't know. Anyways,
Oh god, what's oh no, what is it called? Basically, is this just like a Jaeger fireball rumple shot?
Oh, I don't even know. Like, I'm talking like you've got like a ice someone in the chat will know, but there's like an ice luge, I don't know, something that you like pour the shot down and someone stands at the bottom and like takes the shot.
Yeah.
Anyways, the bottom line here is that it was absolutely drunk and it was perfect, because this competition just is, like you said, it's chaos and it lives up to the name. I think in general, like you said, NoCo deserved the win. You know, obviously you look at Billy King, like, just dictating things out there, a couple of assists. The whole match though was like, I can't imagine like someone like Alan who watches the games on like 1.5 speed to like catch up or whatever. I can't imagine this match watched at that speed, because I would have trouble following what exactly was happening. Because it would just be goals. It would just be
it
goals.
Was the
like
second half too. Like the first half was 0-0.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I'm just going to run through it for you. Rendon, he is conversation hottest player in the league right now.
Very good.
So it's 1-0 to NoCo. Clayton Sorg makes it 1-1. 4 minutes later, Jackson Dietrich makes it 2-1. Then Ethan Howard makes it 3-1. Well, obviously Central Valley's dead now. They get a penalty in the 80th to make it 3-2. Raul Mendiola makes it 3-3 3 minutes later, and straight from kickoff, Danny Robles makes it 4-3.
Yeah. Just madness. And that's what it's just like. It is exactly, you know, I think we talked about it before with the Jägermeister Cup, but it is doing exactly what it was supposed to, right? Like it was injecting some fun and like just giving an extra competition for these teams to just try stuff. Central Valley has clearly seen it as like, hey, we're not really doing much in the regular season, but we've got a shot at glory. And they really are like pouring all they can into this competition. I think in general, like it's been I think for anyone who is questioning like why are they doing this, these are the sort of matches that you point to, and it's like this is why. Like this is why we have this.
I think if you're really looking at this match, and we kind of just in general, like I said, Central Valley, 3 draws, 1 loss. That's kind of better than what they're doing in the league, and they've taken points off of really good teams, off of Union Omaha, off of I think Ford Madison is in their group as well, and then now Northern Colorado. These are really good teams. Right now, you could argue the top 3 teams in the league. I mean, there's a conversation for Greenville, obviously. Oh, I'm so sorry. Spokane Velocity, who's just another top 5 team in the league right now. Like when you're talking about form, when you're talking about just where they are, Northern Colorado is one of the hottest teams across any level in the league, in the USL Championship, League 1, League 2, don't care. Put Northern Colorado against them, they'll give them a fight. Union Omaha is an absolute monster right now. And then you're looking at Spokane, who has been pretty good for an expansion team, kind of falling back to earth, but even so, they look like a top 5, top 6 team. Then you have the bottom feeders of League 1, and they're giving them fights. They are not easy matches. They are taking Union Omaha to penalties. They're doing the whole thing where if you're looking at the USL, I guess it has something to do with the penalties at the very end, where teams are like, we don't want to go to penalties. We just refuse to go to penalties. We would rather just win or lose. We don't want to make it all the way there. And it's giving us chaos games. And it's really just the most fun that I've had watching in the USL since, well, I guess League 1 last year, but that's not fair.
Yeah, it's been a blast. And I think we've said it before, but it bears repeating that the expansion of the League Cup to include the championship is something I need yesterday.
I want to keep it in groups. I would love for it to be like a Champions League thing and just like keep it in groups, like the now Champions League, not the whatever it is next year.
Yeah.
But like put them in regionalized groups. Let the teams close together play each other, and just whoever's on top goes into knockouts. I think that it would just bring so much chaos, a little bit of extra eyes, and I think it would just be so much fun. And that's just what it's been. USL Inside does drop one into the chat of what are the biggest rivalries in the USL. You can't start off the conversation without, I think, immediately saying the Henny Derby. Like Richmond, Madison is as premier as it gets. I think that conversation starts and stops with Henny Derby. From there, I mean, you can name any of your regional rivalries and you can have a conversation. New Mexico, El Paso is one of the more intense, like heated ones from day one. It was nasty. But
and it was put into the pressure cooker of COVID, where
Yeah.
they played each other like 8 times in 2020. So it just got like intensified to a different degree because they got put in the same whatever regional group in the COVID shortened season.
But in the end, I just think that you're looking at I just think you start and stop with Richmond, Ford, Madison, man. There's just nothing like it that I can think of in the world that is so, and just kind of, I'm a white guy talking about the Henny Derby. I leave it for Kyle and Yogi, who are with Walking 90, who are with their own River City, and I think Kyle might be with Talking Flock. I don't think he is though. He might just be Walking 90. I can't remember off the top of my head now. But those are the guys you talk to about it because they can tell you everything about the nuances of what it truly is. It's the only black derby that we have in the US, and
Yeah.
really you don't see it in Europe anywhere. It's so special. Yeah. LIPAFC is fun. I do, and it's a fun name. I think the fans hate each other more than the players get involved with it, to be honest. But in terms of rivalries, I think there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
Coming up though, we have a no-cal derby. I did find out there is not a name for it, so I did not feel stupid when I did not know a name. It's because there isn't one, because everybody has the interstate insert number derby. And they're like, we don't really care about that. Thank you, Rion. But let's talk about that just a little bit as we are getting into the predictions part of tonight. I want to go ahead and start off with Sacramento, Oakland, not the one we'll go to, but the original fixture. This one in the dim of the abominable. One who can beat Tampa Bay and one who cannot. Oakland walks in with their head high, and Sacramento kind of looking to get back on track at home.
It's funny because I just praised Oakland a bunch, and I talked about how Sacramento couldn't deal with Tampa, and I have Sacramento locked for this one. Unfortunately, the reason though is the one key thing that's changed for Sacramento in the interim is the addition of Justin Portillo. I loved what I saw from Sacramento in their game last weekend. I think they are starting to get more out of that attacking duo too. Trevor Amon started on the bench, and I think it did do some good in terms of like Kieran McKenna getting a little bit more of the ball. He is just like classy in front of goal. And what this has really done for me is like Sac Republic now has a little bit freer midfield by allowing Nick Ross to not have as many defensive duties. And when you've got Luis Felipe and Justin Portillo sort of managing things, like they're clogging up the midfield, I just think they're going to make it extremely difficult for Oakland on the night. And the quality that Sac Republic ultimately have up top, I think is just going to be too much. The thing is though, that and I feel a little bit nervous locking them, is that they always seem to find a way to sort of mid through some of these games. And yeah, I just think oh wait, did I say Kieran McKenna? I probably was talking about the Ipswich manager, huh?
Yeah.
I meant the
Kieran
other
Phillips.
guy, Kieran Phillips, sorry. Yeah. Kieran McKenna's going to go out there and score goals for Sac Republic.
There's a reason why he didn't sign his contract, because he was in negotiations with Sacramento.
Yeah, it turns out he's not going to be managing Chelsea. He's going to be playing for Sac Republic. Anyway, so yeah, Kieran Phillips, sorry, the quality he has on the ball is next level. Yeah, so I'm a little nervous locking them because they have a way of just being average in some of these games, but I think I think Sac Republic with this Portillo edition, they just feel, I keep waiting for them to really dominate, and I think it is coming. I think a game where they truly knock someone over is on its way.
I mean, I said on Twitter, and I love Roder Lopez. He kind of liked the comment, or he liked the post I made, and it was basically like, when Sacramento chooses to be good, they can't be beaten. The issue is Sacramento just knows they're so good, and I'm sure they try, but there are matches where they show up in the first moment that they have the ball. You're just like, uh-oh, Sacramento is here. And for a no-cal derby, it kind of feels like they sort of have to put on a show, especially considering that everybody knows that the next time they play is going to be on CBS. You can't go into that saying we lost the first leg. That's going to be the entire talking point on one of the biggest games in all of USL's schedule. I took Sacramento. I want to believe in Oakland because, like you said, I do think what they did was they could replicate it. I think they could really shut down what Sacramento does. Man, I know Tampa Bay just beat them at home, but you just don't take the away team in Sacramento. Yes, Tampa Bay did it, but that's so dumb. Like, you just don't. I'd take in Sacramento.
Yeah.
I want to hit a couple of League One, then we're going to go back to the championship. Let's go ahead, talk a little bit about let's do Madison versus Tormenta. Madison, hot. Tormenta, like, they are really just riding the wave of, Ford Parker is back there. Please save us. They've had a couple of moments of shine though throughout the year where you feel like they're just one moment away from clicking, but it just hasn't fully happened. Can it happen against one of the top teams in the league?
I'm picking Madison. I do think they've just taken another step for me, Madison, in terms of, it's like we've had times in the past where they've gone on like some nice runs. We've had times in the past where they've been sort of in that middle of the pack conversation of like, yeah, they're like outside favorites, or they might be dangerous in the playoffs. This year they have taken a step into that more elite level of League One. And I think they are truly the one of the most serious sides, and up there in that conversation. So yeah, I think the Mingos get the better of the Ibises.
The iBuy,
Ibuy.
Sure.
That can't be it.
That
Can't be it.
Definitely not. But I said it. Man, it's so hard for me to pick against Ford Madison. Sousa looks incredible. Shipman has done the thing that I've been begging him to do, which is take a step forward. I thought he was the weak link on the team, and this year he's stepped up. Mel has been pretty good. Cruel has been pretty good. It's hard for me to see them really being beaten. That said, Tormenta has looked solid recently. Yes, they lost 3-1 to Greenville. Kinda who hasn't? They lose to Richmond, which you want to get that one back. But in general, I just think that Ford Madison just has more, frankly, of the Jimmys and Joes to get it done. That said, I'm a big Lombardi fan. And I know they're kind of rotating between Parker and Romig right now. I think that Romig has showed he's not the better of the two. I don't know if there's an injury thing going on. I do want to shout out one thing with Tormenta though. They had their academy team played their inclusion team. I can't remember the exact phrase or like the exact. I think it's their unified team, where people of different like mental, physical ailments played against their academy team. And I love that from Tormenta so much. And the biggest thing that I really liked about it was that what they were posting about it were just normal highlights. They posted them as highlights. Their final score graphic was a player celebrating a goal, like you would see for every other post-match graphic on their page. It felt so professional, so ingrained, so this is normal, because for them, they continue to do stuff in their community that this is just normal. Man, I love it. I love it they continue to do stuff like this. Hats off to Tormenta.
Yeah, that's legit. You love to see it.
I think Omaha is doing something similar as well. I think they also have a unified team. I'm not positive. Someone in Omaha land, please let me know. And I want to do one last League One before we go to the championship, and that is going to be One Knox versus Northern Colorado. One Knox, whom I can't figure out, are they good? Are they not? Versus Northern Colorado, whom, like we've mentioned a lot they are one of your hottest teams across any level of the USL.
I went with NoCo. I'm playing the hot hand here. I know that their game against Union Omaha was impacted by that red card for Omaha, but a win over Omaha in Omaha is hard to come by. So it could be a signal that this NoCo team is truly serious versus like just Jaeger serious. And
Are we all?
and yeah, like you said, Rendon is in great form. I'm buying what NoCo's selling at the moment.
I took one Knox purely because I think Powder's gone on international duty. I I think they're another team that has a lot of international guys. I think they have 2 guys that play for Trinidad and Tobago. I'm almost positive Noah Powder's one, but I know they're another team that constantly has internationals. If I made this pick assuming that Powder's out, if he's not, then this is just embarrassing. But I think that him being gone causes enough disruption in what they're doing over on that right wing side that Nas can take advantage of it. But I also think that if you're NoCo, if if one of your players being out for international duty is what causes you to not be picked, I think you're also pretty happy because you know he's not going to be on international duty forever. He's back. So I think you're okay.
I am trying to see for sure whether he got called up or not. But anyways,
I know he got called up. Now,
Yeah.
whether he's still going to be on international at that time, I don't
Probably.
know.
but
So
we'll see.
we will see. Let's go down back to the championship now and go ahead and get to some of these other matches. If I can find whatever the heck I sent. Here we go. The Fail Caesar Derby. I'm sure that Detroit City fans don't call it that, but it's always fun to see Pierman go back to Detroit and give a big old Fail Caesar as Detroit City goes and takes on Charleston. Detroit City gets a big win over Rhode Island. They looked dominant while doing it. Meanwhile, Charleston on the low cannot buy a goal right now. Who you got?
I have this one as a draw, sort of because of that. Just the goal scoring form for Charleston and Detroit City. I think what I liked about the win against Rhode Island is that what they were doing felt very familiar in terms of they were really doing a good job of exploiting wide areas. We know that Charleston's strength, I'm not saying that they have a weakness out wide, but far from it. Charleston is still an extremely good team, and I think they'll still be extremely dangerous all season. I think avoiding and keeping the play somewhat away from Aaron Malloy, like in the middle of the park, is sort of the way to do it. And the way that they were exploiting wide areas against Rhode Island did just make me think that, hey, like maybe this Detroit team is sort of finding their feet again in terms of where the goals are going to come from. I was encouraged by Ben Morris and like how he was operating and sort of the link ups out there. So yeah, in general, I was encouraged by what Detroit did, to the extent that I think like, hey, this is sort of an emotional match with the whole, there is going to be a lot of energy around the Fail Caesar stuff. And yeah, I think it just kind of nullifies the occasion and turns it into a draw.
Man, I think it's going to be Detroit City. I just really do. Until Myers or Markanich can kind of catch fire. I mean, Markanich had what, 12 goals through 14? There was no world where he was going to be able to uphold that. That's about, let me do quick math. That's what, 30 goals over a 34 match season? Can't expect that. But when he's not scoring, who's going to pick up the scraps? You expect it to be Myers, but if both are cold, who do you got? I'm sure they're going to be fine. Malloy is the best set piece taker in the league. And so anytime he's standing over a corner, anytime he's 40 yards away, anytime that he's 20 yards away, I think you can legitimately say that the ball has a 50% chance to going into the back of the net. He delivers a ball to his player's forehead every single time. He puts it on frame every single time. I think Charleston's going to put on pressure. But man, thinking about the juice that Keyworth is going to have, they got to win again. And, you mentioned Ben Morris. He looked solid again. Like, he looked like the guy he could be. I'm taking Detroit, honestly, purely because of the Northern Guard. I kind of hate to say it like that, but this is just one of those matches that they're going to make Charleston miserable because they make everybody miserable. But the extra juice that this game is going to have, I think if you're in the Detroit area, I think you find a way to make it to this one. If you've been on the fence, this is one I think you go to because I think that it's going to be otherworldly level of atmosphere.
I have been putting in the work to try to convince my wife to go to this game. So because we're about 45 minutes down the road, so I'm trying to make it to this one. Yeah, in general, it'll be interesting. Now Charleston could go in there and blow them out like 6-0. Who knows?
And I don't think anybody will be shocked by that either because Ben Pierman, is just going to have the guys fired up too. I mean, it's just one of those. It's just one of those kind of matches. Do a couple more before we call it a night. And I want to look at our Tampa Bay versus Louisville. I think a lot of people would say this is the marquee match of this week. Tampa Bay, who again skid a little bit. Lou City, who looks like they may never lose again. Even then, this is just always one of those matches where it doesn't feel like it matters what the form is for anybody. It's going to be a 1-goal game, and we're going to see top of the top talent go against top of the top talent in one of the best locations in the league. It's going to be a must watch, but what can they expect, Phil?
I picked Tampa purely just for the drama of it. I think it's so hard to pick between these teams. Louisville is obviously like smart money, I think, just because of the streak they're on. They like you said, they don't look like losing anytime soon. They were probably even a little unfortunate with just winning by the 1 goal over North Carolina. It was pretty lopsided. That being said, Tampa has a history of nullifying Louisville in some of these matches. There's been and if Tampa can take anything from that game against Sacramento a little bit ago, it's that when they play top teams, they can really, really look a cut above. A lot of this will depend on the battle at fullback. I know I talked about wide areas for Detroit City. I think that the fullbacks in this one are going to be challenged on both ends because it's going to be both teams trying to get down the wings, trying to get people involved. And so I think, the likes of Bodley are going to be really important if Tampa's going to get a result. And I think important for Tampa too is to just obviously kind of get ahead of the crowd really getting into this one. And if they can get on the score sheet first and sort of keep it from getting into this crazy, because we've seen teams let it get away from them essentially if Louisville takes the lead. And it's happened on more than one occasion where a sort of normal game turns into a blowout quite quickly. So I'm taking Tampa, but I think it's more of it's gonna ride on a knife edge, this one.
I'm taking Louisville. I think no matter what, I would take the home team. If it was in Tampa, I'm taking Tampa. If it's in Louisville, I'm taking Louisville. It's just one of those kind of matches where I think you can flip a coin. Your guess is as good as mine. If you feel like you're a liar. No one really knows. I think that you just hedge the home team. But man, Tampa does have a little bit of that villain in them. Not like a Phoenix, but like they just have a little bit of the we get up for the big stadium kind of team. And if there's anybody that could go into Louisville and do it, you do back Tampa to be one of the few. But I am going to take Louisville nonetheless. Last but not least, I do want to talk El Paso versus Phoenix. El Paso looks like they could be turning things around. Like they were getting results against decent teams. Phoenix gets a result against a good team. These are two teams that are looking like they're starting to look upward and onward. Which team keeps it going?
I picked Phoenix, and I'll explain myself because I keep getting flamed by Seriously Loco followers who are like, Phil picked against us or whatever. I'll explain my reasoning, and that is talking to Wilmer Cabrera last week, which if you haven't listened
Great
to
episode,
our
by the
interview,
way.
yeah, appreciate that. We got a chance to talk to Wilmer, and he is a really great interview. And he talked about the fact that like watching the game against Charleston, where his first game in charge, they win on the road against a very good Charleston team. And then the home game against Birmingham, he said it was like really shocking the difference of how the team plays away versus how they play at home. And we're going on now like 2 years and change of like really, really bad home form for Locomotive that has sort of started during the John Hutchinson era and has never really recovered. Their record at home is abysmal, and this team is genuinely like nervous to make mistakes or like lose at home, and they end up playing like so passively, as I think we saw against Birmingham. So yeah, for me, I can't pick this Locomotive team at home until they show that they've gotten over whatever the heck is going on, like when they take the field at Southwest University Park.
I'm hedging the bet that I think El Paso breaks out of it. Man, yes, we talked San Antonio. What does it really mean? Is San Antonio? We had a whole segment on it today. But God, I believed in what they did. I really believed in what I saw with El Paso. Eventually, the home form has to break. It just has to at some point. It can't go on like this forever. I'm hedging that this is the game. I like what Formella is doing for Phoenix, but I do feel like he's kind of just been a one-man band a little bit at times. I'm going to back El Paso despite the home form telling me otherwise.
And I think like to say on the Phoenix side, I did like what they were able to do last week. But that being said, the way it played out and the way that like Formella scored those goals, I would say in general there was some a little bit naivete from Orange County and like letting Phoenix get down the bylines and all that stuff, get down to the end line and cut it back. So I'm hoping that they're not as repeatable in terms of like getting into those sorts of areas. But yeah, all things considered, I just think like I'm hoping a little bit that, as last year, I can maybe reverse jinx El Paso out of poor home form. But yeah, if I was going to be wrong against anyone, I'd love for it to be Locomotive win at home to Phoenix, because that's the other team out there that has not a lot of love in El Paso.
Does Phoenix have a whole lot of love from anybody in the Western Conference?
I guess when you're that good for as long as they were, no one really likes you.
I guess if anybody doesn't care, it's probably Monterey Bay. Monterey Bay kind of came in and Phoenix was just fine.
Yeah, Phoenix was average by the time they got here. It's like someone who became a Premier League fan after like 2013 and is like, why does everyone hate Man United?
They're not even that great. Like,
It's like yeah.
Fair. Final USL thoughts for you?
No, just yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully I can get to this Charleston game, because it would be yeah, in Detroit, just a lot of fun. And but aside from that, I think we've about covered it.
For me, one of Legion WFC's former players, Ashlyn Sarepka, gets signed for Carolina Ascent. She had originally gone to Europe and I think scored, I think it was 14 goals in 12 games in Europe. And they brought her back to her hometown in North Carolina, which is cool. So it's nice seeing a former Birmingham player get the promotion of semi-pro to pro. Now I just wish that Birmingham socials would acknowledge that, because that's a major accomplishment for the academy to get a professional player. So I wish they would do that, but I'm so proud of Ashlyn. She is one of the most talented players I have seen, just a natural in front of goal. I saw her 3 separate times last year nutmeg a player for a goal. I like went between someone's legs and for a goal 3 different times, and not the keeper, a defender. And I'm like, you're just not even trying. You're just having fun. You could have scored this regularly, but you chose not to. She is just different gravy. Ton of fun. Excited to watch what Carolina does. Them and Tampa Bay Sun might end up becoming my adopted teams because of players that they've signed. So
That's awesome. Love to see the hometown connection.
also, we didn't talk TST. Don't really want to talk too much TST, but USL had some pretty good showings. Like a lot of former USL players, Dom Dwyer. No, it had a lot of good showings in the TST, so that was fun. I feel like almost every team had a large USL contingency, so it was a lot of I remember that guy. I remember that guy. And for Tampa Bay Sun, it's like I can't wait to watch more of her. I like when I was watching the Sun, I was like, man, we get to watch them this upcoming game, like this upcoming season. It just made me really excited and really nostalgic.
Yeah. Pretty wild too when I think this kind of happened last year too, when Newtown Pride won. But I love in the end that it is like sort of the from nowhere team that wins the whole thing, right? Like it's not Nani and yeah. So I will say, like, fun tournament, and yeah, plenty of USL representation too. So it's pretty cool.
Final thoughts for the night?
House of the Dragon starts on Sunday, and I'm gonna be deep in that. Like that's gonna be appointment viewing every Sunday night, and yeah, so I'm back on the HBO train there. And aside from that, it's gonna be I'm getting extremely excited for our trip to Oakland. So that's all I'm gonna talk about for the next like however long it is. It's like what, a month and a couple of weeks. So yeah, that's it. I mean, it's getting to the point where it's sort of distracting from my like normal life, because I'm just very, very excited for that.
I'm trying to plan a flight right now and figure out how I'm going to get to. I can't believe I'm doing this, an Oakland Athletics game, because I have a book that my wife gave me for Christmas. Because my goal since I was a little kid is go to every single ballpark in Major League Baseball. Well, one of them is about to be taken off of the off of the rotation, and I have one chance to go see it.
That's
And
awesome.
so I'm trying to figure out like how can I land, check out an Oakland Athletics game, and get back to my hotel. Like, how am I going to get there? Like, I'm trying to do all the logistics, and it's not working. But I'm going to figure it out. But it's all I'm thinking about too. I'm so stoked. I'm fired up for it. I can't. Just being there is going to be cool. The fact that we get to it's a big step for the USL show, and I'm super stoked.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
let's see. I had it. Oh, my big. I really don't watch a whole lot of TV. I'm not a big TV guy. I'm mainly just cooking shows. But today, speaking of cooking, pecan crusted chicken turned out really well. We,
Nice.
we had fresh pecans, put them in the blender, mixed it in with some flour, and it was just like, oh, this is actually pretty good. So I was pretty stoked about that.
That's legit. Let him cook. Let him
Please,
cook.
please do. Anyway, that's all I kind of have for the night. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you to our patrons who support the show. And thank you to goals.tv. Check them out for free. If you're on podcast player, it is in the description. Again, it's free. It costs you nothing. Go check them out. And for the first and only time of night, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.